Women Taking the Lead, episode 135.
And so I think what makes me a better leader is I try to spend my 100% attention on a particular thing and encourage my team to do that as well. Because multitasking, everyone says, oh, I'm really good at multitasking. Well, I don't want to be good at multitasking because that means I'm never giving 100% to your project. And so I want to be able to do that. And so that's kind of what I'm putting out there as being a leader in design, is being able to focus 100% on a particular project.
Hello, my name is Jody Flynn and welcome to Women Taking the Lead, where we are all about creating blasts of inspiration to help you overcome self-doubt so you can lead with confidence, integrity, and a sense of humor. Head over to womentl.com/recognize to reserve your spot in our upcoming webinar on how to be recognized and rewarded for the work you do. Now, your future awaits, so let's get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm here with Emily Mottram, who grew up in Pennsylvania. She received her degree from Penn State, and in 2007, she and her husband moved to Maine, where a passion for functional yet beautiful space led Emily to start Mottram Architecture and start pursuing design with an emphasis on cold climate building. She's licensed in Maine, Pennsylvania, and New York, and her burning desire is to design simple, attractive, durable homes that use space efficiently, but in a soulful and creative way. Oh, I love that, Emily. So that is just a little bit for everyone to kind of get a feel for who is on today, but tell us more about you and your own humble beginnings.
Sure. I went to Penn State in the 2000s to get my architecture degree. And then my husband and I moved to Washington, D.C., and I did a lot of residential construction for people in Washington, D.C. area. And my husband and I woke up one day. He was from rural Maine and I was from rural Pennsylvania. And we said, what are we doing in Washington, D.C.? So we moved to Maine, where he's from, and the market, of course, got pretty terrible in about 2008. We like to joke that being an architect was considered gainfully unemployed in 2008 through 2012 almost. But I saw it as an opportunity for what did Maine particularly need. You could get out of the field of architecture and do something different, or you could make it work for you. And the one thing that I thought Maine really needed was better housing stock. Some of the housing in Maine was built in the 1800s with some of the oldest housing stock in the country. And when you owned the back 40 acres of a woodlot, you just cut down more wood, but we don't live like that anymore. And so I really felt that it was important to start designing and renovating houses that would take advantage of using less energy, using less materials, less fossil fuels to get through everyday life. Because as you know, being from Maine yourself, it gets really cold. And so having to heat your house is really expensive. And New England is one of the only places left in the country that still uses fuel oil to heat their houses because it's so remote and rural. And I just thought there had to be a better way. And I was trained as an architect, but I wasn't trained to understand building science. And I thought that was really important, that buildings should be designed with the performance in mind, as opposed to made energy efficient after they were designed. So that was kind of what started me down the path of doing energy efficient residential design, zero energy design, passive house, all these kind of fun, cool standards that make better, more comfortable houses so people are more comfortable in their space.
Wow, Emily, that's amazing. And having started my business in 2010, I was hearing a lot about businesses that were struggling during that recession and how hard it was. But what kept coming up time and time again were the companies that were thriving through the recession because they were adapting
Yeah.
to it. They were being more flexible and actually paying attention to what was needed in the marketplace during that recession. And yes, being in Maine, a big topic of conversation, and it happens all year round. It doesn't matter what the weather is like, is the price of oil and the price of heating your home. Big topic. And so you took what could have been a horrible experience and turned it around and took advantage of what was going on in the marketplace and what was needed in the marketplace, especially in Maine, which was how to heat your home more efficiently and to go about it in a different way rather than looking at, what fuel you're going to burn to heat your home to try to save money, but actually look at the design of the home itself to be more efficient.
Yeah. So it was just so important to reduce the amount of whatever type of fuel you were using, whether it was electric. At the time, there were programs in the state that were putting electric heat pumps in, but the electricity rate in Maine is like 15 or 17 cents a kilowatt hour. So using electricity to heat your house without reducing how much you needed would just be so expensive, and so there was just this whole idea of being able to reduce the amount that you would need, which I found to be really fascinating. Before I decided to go to architecture school, my second interest was in science. And so I thought it was kind of cool that there was this whole building science component to architecture.
Yeah, I love that. And I can hear in your voice, you have a lot of confidence around this. Like you've studied this, you've worked with it, you're feeling really good. And I know from conversations we've had prior to this one, you're feeling really good about what's going on in your business and the growth you've experienced lately. But for this next question, I'd like you to take us back to a time in your life when you were playing small, right? Those moments where we really don't recognize our own value. So we play smaller than what we're capable of. Share with us the story and the lessons you've learned.
Sure. I certainly think that there were a lot of things that were obstacles and roadblocks in my way prior to getting where I am now. And one of them was in 2009 when I wanted to start my own business. I had gone to meet with a counselor, and the counselor says to me, "Well, you're really young. No one's ever going to hire you." And I thought, for the longest time, and I still think it's a hang up that I have every once in a while, I just keep thinking, I'm really young, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. And then I remember that I've been doing this now for a significant period of time, and I do know what I'm doing, and I do have this specialty, but architecture is really still a male-dominated field. I think in the American Institute of Architects, only 17% of registered architects are women. So, it's a really unique and challenging field to be a female in. So not only was I young, I was female, and so I had this challenge where I felt like I basically had to prove myself, and so. One of the things that I was doing a lot of was energy consulting, and I had gone out to a house, and the gentleman meets me at the door and says, "Well, where's the rest of your crew?" And I said, "Well, it only takes one person to do this evaluation." And he's like, "Well, you're a woman." And I said, "Yes, I am. And if you feel like at the end of our evaluation that I don't know what I'm talking about and that I haven't given you a value-added service, I will walk away and I won't charge you for the audit." And at the end, he says, "I think you might be the smartest person I know." And I thought, that gave me sort of a little boost of confidence. Like, yeah, you know what? I do know what I'm doing, but being young and being female in a male-dominated field has always been a struggle for, I believe, most female architects. And so for me personally, I've sort of found a niche, and I've started working with specific contractors who not only don't question my age or whether or not I'm male or female, but also are really willing to do some of these cool and interesting things that are part of the building science field, which is the second struggle that I have in Maine. typically in Maine, contractors have, worked for their dad, who worked for their dad, and they've been doing it this way for 25 years. And when you're building a super energy efficient passive house or net zero structure, it's a different way of building. And you sort of have to put your foot down and say, I know it may seem like I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do. and I want you to do it in this different way. And so it's certainly a struggle that, people who have built this way for 25 years don't always respond well to doing things in a new way. But after they've done it several times, they start to be believers. But it's a challenge, for sure, to the first time you work with a contractor that doesn't know how to do energy performance building, because it can be very different, and it's a struggle. And then to try to make that work is it's interesting, but a challenge.
Yeah, I think being young and female, we've all, for the women who are listening, we've been there, yes. Right? I experienced that as well when I started my coaching business, because, my focus is to be the coach to the entrepreneur, the business owner. And I did have, well-intentioned people say to me, I'm concerned about you because you look very young. Yeah. Right. And you are a woman. The perception of some male business owners might be, what can this person possibly teach me? And actually, one of my clients shared with me that was his thought when we first met. What can this woman or young girl, which was what he was thinking, what can she teach me? And, and I have clients who go up against that as well. And the advice I give them is exactly what you did, Emily, is just keep doing what you're doing. Right? Showcase your expertise, focus on what you're good at. You can only continue to just put one foot in front of the other. And as you build up a caseload and case studies and testimonials, you'll win people over. But, the bias is going to be there, and it comes from women and men. It's not just men who think this way. I've also had women who thought the same thing. She's so young.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And, it just takes time, because we all have some expertise and some area that we're really good at. That's where our value comes from. And so lean into that. That's what I say. Just keep believing, give people time, let them be won over. And I think people want to be won over, but they're very skeptical at first. So I love that approach you took, where it was just like, if you're not happy at the end of this, it will be free, or please trust the method to my madness. Yeah. There's a reason we're doing this.
And I found typically when I back it up with, just like you said, case studies, the education, anybody who's ever met me knows that I'm a serial student. I just took a 2-week class in New York City to get another energy certification, because I think that, it's so important to keep up with the technology and everything in your field, but I just like to learn. And so generally I find that after someone has talked to me and we've talked through a project, they start to get on board, and so I would encourage anybody just to, believe in yourself, and then people will start to believe in you. I mean, even the gentleman that said, you're really young and no one will ever hire you, till I left that meeting, he was like, wow, you really know what you're doing. How are you going to find people to work with you? And I'm like, oh, okay.
We'll figure it out.
Isn't that what you're supposed to help me with?
So true. But look how far you've come. My goodness. Yes. It's amazing. So let's segue into the time in your journey when you had a wake-up call. So Emily, take us back to that moment. And for some people, it's like an epiphany. It's a lightning bolt. For some people, it's a slow awakening. But there's a moment when you're ready for action. Share with us that moment and the steps you took that led to your success.
Sure. So I think that moment came for me. So I started my business in 2009, and whenever you start a new architectural business, I think, unless you have a client base that you bring with you, you essentially have to start from scratch. And so I was doing a lot of energy consulting at the same time, because that was something that really played well into my practice. So I was teaching and doing energy consulting and doing projects through my business. And I woke up one day going, I'm working like 90 to 100 hours a week, and I'm not focusing on my business. So I'm doing all of these things because I'm afraid to take a leap and just do it. And I was traveling all over the country doing large-scale energy consulting for a company out of South Carolina, and I finally said, no, this isn't what I want to do. The energy performance is absolutely, important, but I want to bring that to architecture and create these soulful and beautiful places, and that's what I have within me that I really wanted to do. And I finally said, it'll never happen if I don't just make the commitment. I'm tired of working 100 hours a week and feeling like I'm never giving anybody 100% of me because I'm so stressed out, stretched thin, doing all these things. And I finally said, okay, I'm going to cut back on the consulting, and I'm going to actively pursue the work that I want to do. And when I stopped doing all the things I didn't want to do, all of these opportunities presented themselves for things that I did want to do. And so I feel like you have to just open yourself up to the really scary things, like taking that leap. And I'm extremely lucky because I have a very supportive husband who said, yeah, go for it. We'll make it work. And so I did that. And that was sort of the wake up moment for me, which was, part of what I bring to architecture with this energy efficient and soulful spaces is to give people, their own lives, their own space, not spend as much on their houses, really enjoy these beautiful spaces that I wasn't enjoying my own space. And so I think that once I kind of let go of all of that, I was able to concentrate more on what I wanted to do and be in a happier place with my business. So
yeah, I've heard that story time and again, or some similar stories, I should say, that whole concept of doing work you don't want to do because it's the work that's coming at you.
Right.
Right. Knowing that there's work you'd rather be doing. And you summed it up so perfectly, where you have to take that scary step of saying no to the work you don't want to do first.
Yes.
Right. Really not knowing what's going to come. But every time I've heard somebody tell this type of story, they all say, just like you did, and then opportunity after opportunity in the work I wanted to do started showing up because I had more space for it.
Right.
And that can be so hard to take that first step, but you're so right. If we just take what comes at us without discerning whether or not it's the work we're meant to be doing, it's the work we want to be doing, we'll get busy really fast doing work we don't want to be doing.
Exactly. And that was basically what happened is I was doing, a bunch of important work. And that was what was also challenging, was to let go of things that I knew I was doing something important, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And so, it took a little bit to kind of let go of that, because it's a little scary to say, if I let go of this, will something else fill the place? And it does, when you kind of, stop doing the different quadrants, the busy and important to not important and not urgent, and, start really working on important but not urgent aspects of your business. So.
Yeah, the stuff that will really move it forward. And I heard a quote, it's not recent, but I started taking it on recently when I noticed I kept getting into this cycle of like clearing my plate and then filling it up again, clearing my plate and filling it up. And I always bring myself back to that point of overwhelm, right? Where it's just like a slot machine when it's like, it all falls apart, right? Yeah. So I heard this quote and I took it on practicing it. So I'm offering it up to you and to anybody else who wants it, though I think you've already taken it on. And it goes, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
That's great.
Right? Because there's always really good opportunities that will come where you'll be like, oh, that's really exciting. That would be really cool to do. But is it exactly what you should be focusing on at that time? Is it exactly the work that you want to be doing at that time? Because oftentimes the things that will send us into overwhelm come in a pretty package.
Right. They
look good. They look exciting. So we say yes. And before we know it, we're in overwhelm. So if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
It's a no. That's a great quote. I think it was, I read a lot of business books, and I think it was in Dave Ramsey's Entrepreneurship book that he said, if you take on everything that comes to you and you don't have a mission statement and an idea behind your company to weigh new projects against, does this meet our mission? He's like, you'll find out you climb to the top of the ladder and the ladder is leaning on the wrong building. So
yes.
I always thought that was really fitting. Like, oh yeah, you take on all these projects and you might be really successful and you get to the top and you're like, wait, I wanted to be on that building.
Right. You got fooled because you were climbing.
Right.
You were still climbing. You were still achieving. You were still seeing success. You just landed in the wrong place because you weren't paying attention to where you were going. Oh, I love that. All right. And Emily, this is a great segue because what I want everyone to get is there's no one way to lead. We're all different. So we're going to lead differently. We have different strengths, personality styles. And for you, you've done a lot of reading. You've read a lot of, you're a lifelong learner. You've read a lot of business books. So how would you describe your leadership style?
Gosh, that's a good question because I don't know if you've ever taken a DISC survey.
I have.
And so I am firmly planted in the C category. I'm all about the learning and the analytics behind it. And so my leadership style is I don't necessarily care how we get there as long as it's right in the end. And so I spend a lot of time, I think, doing research and being really involved in the details, which I think comes back to being trained as an architect. That's essentially what we're trained to do. But I think my leadership style has a lot to do with just doing a lot of research and pulling it all together and making sure that the scale and the proportion of whatever it is fits together. And then I try to disseminate that to my team. I'm a sole proprietor and I work for myself, but I have a bunch of consultants that do work with me. And when we build a team, we try to put together, the right team. Even when I do a project on my own, I try to encourage a homeowner to choose a contractor early on in the design process, which is not as common of a scenario because I feel like pulling that together and pulling everybody's knowledge in gets you a better project in the long run. So I think I really love the idea of team building and this organic movement to come up with the right answer in the end.
Yeah, and I really can appreciate the C style because I'm an ID, so we're on the opposite side of the spectrum. Yeah, which can, in some cases for people can cause conflict. But what I find is there's a nice collaboration between our different styles. And what I appreciate about your style, the C style, is you do ask questions.
Yes.
To get more information, to get a bigger picture, to make sure we're going in the right direction before we take off. Whereas, my style has a tendency to latch on to big ideas, get really excited and take off before we've done the research. Right. Yeah. So it's like my ideal is to be partnering on a team with someone like you. And, because the role you would play is like, whoa. That's a really exciting idea. Let's make sure it's the right one.
Let's get the idea sounds fantastic. Let's get all the parts and pieces together and make this idea really work, or find out that this isn't the right idea for what we're doing.
Before we invest a whole lot of resources, right? Because where you're coming from is I want to make sure we're successful. If we're going to invest a lot of energy, let's make sure we're successful. Right. So awesome. And Emily, what is the biggest leadership or business challenge you're faced with right now?
Probably the biggest challenge that I'm faced with right now is I finally have gotten, a lot of people around me, contractors and other business people who are on board with it. The biggest challenge I have right now is education. People aren't yet asking for these things that they want because they don't know what it is. So a lot of times when someone will go and build a house, they'll say, well, I'll just, order a plan set online and have a contractor build it, or the contractor will know what they're doing. What do I need you for? And so architecture as a profession, I think we've sort of shot ourselves in the foot on this, as we bring so much to the table and people just don't know they need you. And so, especially in the net zero design and the super energy efficient design field, is that people don't know that they need that. And unfortunately, the hardest thing to change in a building is the insulation. And it's the first thing that gets cut out of the budget when the budget comes in over budget. And it's it's mind-boggling to me. And so my biggest challenge right now is really just getting the word out there and explaining to people, in terms that they understand. Like, you want to be comfortable in your house, and you don't want drafty windows, and explaining the sort of principles behind it, because people don't know what they don't know. So that's been the biggest challenge, I think, for me.
And Emily, have you read The Storyteller's Secret?
I have not.
You want to add that to your list, because that book is all about that, how people don't really like to ingest facts and figures. Like, they need them to some extent to help make a decision, but what they really latch onto is the story behind those facts and figures.
Oh, I will definitely add that to my list, is because I'm in such a technical field. Sometimes I have to rein myself back in and say, no, they don't care about the details here. They don't need to know the heat flow and building performance. What they want to know is that they're going to be comfortable in their space, and that they're not going to grow mold because they don't have condensation. And
Right. And that's exactly it. And, in the highly technical fields, because I can also think of, my lawyer as well.
Right.
I'm like, I don't want to know the details. It's what I pay you for.
Exactly.
I trust you. Tell me what I need to know.
Tell me what I need to know and where I need to sign in order to make this work the way it's supposed to.
Right. Like, tell me the story. Give me paint big strokes, broad picture. Where are we going? Great. Where do I sign?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And on the flip side, Emily, what's one thing you're working on right now that you're really excited about?
So I am super excited. I partnered with Clear Conscience Construction in Cumberland to basically create a couple of zero energy prototype houses. So the first one has been up and live since October of last year. And we saw our first zero electricity build. The whole house is electric. And so there's solar panels on the roof, and she paid nothing in electricity in the month of May, I believe, which was super exciting. And the second house is going up. And essentially, one of the hardest things in architecture is people can't actually see plans in 3 dimension. So we wanted to be able to show someone what they can have. And so we're working on these zero energy prototype houses where they built one as a prototype that they can show to people and rebuild over and over again, slightly modified if there are changes that need to be made. But they just had an open house at the first one. The second one is going up, and everybody that came through said, this is fantastic. There's nothing on the market like this right now. And so we were really pleased with the response that we got on the project, because we think it's cool, but we want other people to think it's cool as well. And so I'm really excited about where that's going, and getting maybe some more developer builders on board with doing a similar project where we can basically create these great houses with great space for people that can't necessarily see, what's this plan going to look like in 3 dimensions? Like, what will it look like when it's done?
That's very cool. It's kind of like the Storyteller's Secret, where they get an experience of it. But in this case, they actually get to go in and touch it, yes, and feel it and see it and be inside. Yes. So that's really cool.
So,
all right, Emily, now I'm going to do a quick leadership roundup. So tell us, what is one practice you have that helps to make you a better leader?
I think the one practice that I have is I don't answer my phone or my email all day long, and that I've really put it down where I take chunks of time and I concentrate on a particular project without the distractions, because I feel like in our society today, we can really get caught up in immediate response to emails and the phone ringing. And so I think what makes me a better leader is I try to spend my 100% attention on a particular thing, and encourage my team to do that as well. Because multitasking, everyone says, oh, I'm really good at multitasking. Well, I don't want to be good at multitasking, because that means I'm never giving 100% to your project. And so I want to be able to do that. And so that's kind of what I'm putting out there as being a leader in design, is being able to focus 100% on a particular project.
Yeah, I'm not a big believer in multitasking. When, for me, multitasking equals being pretty good at a bunch of things.
Right.
Happening all at once, but you're not at your best and you're not bringing excellence when you're multitasking. There are times in life when we have to multitask, right? We don't have a choice. Things are being thrown at us, and that's what needs to happen. But that's not the foot I want to lead with.
Right.
If I had a choice.
I agree.
Yeah. And Emily, what's one book, and this will be tough for you because I'm sure you have a lot, but what is one book that you would recommend to a woman to help her develop her leadership?
The E-Myth is probably the best book that I've read. A book that I would highly encourage anybody who is in any kind of either leadership position in their current company or thinking about starting their own business, because it makes you think about business and work differently. Because a lot of businesses are started by somebody with a technical skill where they basically just create a job for themselves, which isn't the same as creating a business. And so you start to look at what are all the parts and pieces that come together to make a successful business. And I think it makes you better in your current job, or it gives you either the courage to take the leap and start your own business, or say, you know what, that's not really for me. So,
yeah, I love it. It's very strategic. And I remember when I read it, I was like, you know what, I think I'm going to take a day off from my business, and read this book and think about and put into practice all of the things that he was talking about. Yes. And it was mind blowing.
It was mind blowing. I think everybody should read that book before. I think everybody should read that book.
Yes, before they start their business. Yes. Right. And Emily, what advice would you give your younger self?
My younger self. Well, my mom raised us to believe that we could do whatever we wanted, and all we had to do was work hard at it and expand. But I've also read the Robert Kiyosaki Rich Dad Poor Dad book, and I think I would have given my younger self more space to think outside the box, to look at things a little bit differently, and to look at everything as an opportunity, And so I work outside the box in architecture in the field that I'm in, but I don't know that I ever gave my life the ability to be like outside of the go to school, get a job, do all that. And so even though I started my business before I was 30, I still think that had I had a broader thought process and everything, I probably, would have done things a little differently.
Absolutely. And now share with us a success quote or a mantra and why it has meaning for you.
I guess my mantra is constant pursuit of knowledge. Why it has meaning to me is, the world is always changing. There's always going to be somebody that's better at your job than you are. And so constantly pursuing knowledge just gives you a more well-rounded aspect to what you're doing, and helps you to be that expert in your field. And so I just think it's so important to continue to educate yourself. And it doesn't have to be within your field. There was an architect who took a couple years off and climbed every mountain that he could and came back a better architect because he had sort of expanded his knowledge just being out in the world. And so I think that's important.
And lastly, Emily, what is the best way for this community to connect with you?
Probably the easiest way is my website, which is Mottram, ARCH.com, so mottраmarch.com. I have a mailing list. So anybody who wants to be on the mailing list that's even remotely interested in zero energy, net zero, energy efficient design, I try to put out a monthly newsletter, just what's going on in the world, what does it mean, just trying to educate more people so that they realize that this is something that they want. So I have a blog, I have a newsletter. All this stuff is really easy to get from my website, or you can always email me at emily@mottramart.com.
Mm-hmm. And I'm on the mailing list because I find this topic just fascinating. I really do. It's so cutting edge. I'm like, this is cool.
Even if you have no interest in ever building or designing a house, it's just interesting information, and you never know who you might run into that is interested. And you can say, hey, I got this great newsletter and you should totally, check it out. And so I find that people sometimes just follow along because they think it's cool.
Yeah, it is. All right. And for those of you listening, you can find all the links and resources shared at this episode at womentakingthelead.com. And Emily, thank you so much for taking the time to inspire and enlighten us. We are all better for having met you.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me on Women Taking the Lead. Are you ready to take the lead in your own life? Head over to womentl.com/recognized to reserve your spot in my upcoming webinar on how to be recognized and rewarded for the work that you do. And to strengthen you on your leadership journey, I'd like to send you off with a quote from Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Again, thank you for joining with me, and here's to your success.